changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. Have you ever been turned down for something and you've been nice about it, and then all of a sudden you get it after all? No one really likes to say no, so I think what happens is that people are so relieved when you're nice about their bad news that they bend over backwards trying to get you a yes after all. And Lindy Schneider provides us with a wonderful example of this in her story called A Gift Returned, which appears in our latest book that just came out, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Gratitude. So here's what happened. Lindy was at a new job that she loved. She had only been at this job for 2 months, but it was great. It was exactly right for her. And its location had made it possible for her and her husband to move to Colorado to be close to their new grandchildren. In fact, it was even going to make it possible for them to afford the mortgage on a house. So they were really excited about this job. And one morning, Lindy arrived at work, chipper as usual, going to this great job, and her friend Luann pulled her aside and whispered that people were being laid off, lots of people. All Lindy could think was, last in, first out, I am gone. But she got to work anyway at her computer, and she worked away, but she had a really bad feeling. And then as she looked around, she saw her manager, one at a time, stopping at people's desks and asking employees to go into his office for a little talk. One woman walked by Lindy's desk, already carrying her box of personal items and crying. And then she yelled out, "You don't do this to people before Christmas." So Lindy just sat there working, hoping, but dreading what she knew was coming. And soon enough, she felt that tap on her shoulder. It was her manager, Chris, telling her to stop her work and come to his office. Now it was Lindy's turn to take that long walk past everyone to the executioner. This manager, who had been so eager to hire her just 2 months ago, was going to fire her now. So her dream of a house was over. She didn't know what she would tell her husband. They had moved to Colorado because she had this job, and she was 60, and it's hard to get hired at age 60. Lindy sat down in Chris's office, and the director of the department was there too, and she noticed that both of these men looked upset and exhausted. And she started thinking about how they must be feeling. She wasn't just thinking about herself. It wasn't their fault that their company had expanded too fast and hired too many people. They were just the messengers, not the bad guys. After they told her she was fired and they explained the paperwork and everything that would happen, they asked her if she had any questions. She said, "No, I'll be okay." And then she said, "Well, I do have a question. How are you doing? This must be brutal for you." The two men were surprised, and they admitted that this was awful for them. The orders to do this had come from their head office on the East Coast, and they were forced to carry out all these terminations. Lindy smiled, and she shook Chris's hand, and she said, "I am so appreciative that you hired me 2 months ago. I have loved this job, and my husband and I could not have moved here without it. Thank you so much." And then she turned and she shook the director's hand, and she told him how grateful she was to have met and worked with him too. The two men looked surprised, and Chris rubbed his face and said, "The one thing I did not expect to hear today was thank you." That night, Lindy was plugging in her cell phone to charge it, and then she noticed she had missed a call that afternoon. There was a voicemail from a recruiter at another company, and this company was in the same business as the one she had just left. The recruiter said that Chris, Lindy's former boss, had recommended her, and that this new company wanted her to come in for an interview for a position that was available right away. And the last thing the recruiter said in the voicemail was, "Anyone who can be so grateful as they are leaving a job would be amazing coming into one." Now that's a great example of the power of gratitude. So Lindy showed grace under pressure, and she handled adversity quite well. And since it's still wedding season, I'm going to talk about adversity again. We're going to share some more wedding disaster stories tomorrow on Wow Wednesday. I'm Amy Newmark. Tell your friends and family about the podcast and teach them how to get a podcast on their phones or on their computers, because most people still don't know how to actually get one. And if you want more powerful stories about what thankfulness can do for you, you can learn more about this new book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Gratitude, on our website, chickensoup.com.